So I've been playing Monster Hunter Wilds ever since it came out. I think it is a fantastic game, not perfect, but a very, very, very good game, and easily the best Monster Hunter game I've ever played, and definitely, definitely one of the best Monster Hunters ever created by far, by far, 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 far. But that's my opinion. Okay. So I love the game. I think it's great. Obviously, probably going to get Game of the Year for me unless something else comes out this year that blows my mind. But I play it every day. It's my favorite Monster Hunter. I love Monster Hunter as a franchise. My favorite Monster Hunter before this was Monster Hunter World, which I put thousands of hours in. But I feel like I'm going to do the same thing with Wilds and maybe even to a greater degree as time goes on. However, a lot of people in the Monster Hunter community are really shitting on this game, and not for a good reason. Not for a good reason. The only reason I can justify shitting on Monster Hunter Wilds to an extent is the performance, because for some people the performance is really bad, but it's not that way for me. I don't know why, but for some people the performance is really bad. So I can understand shitting on the game for that, but everything else I don't fucking get. And I came across a lot of videos so far, just trying to hear other people's opinions, see what they have to say. And a lot of times these guys are just really talking out of their ass, saying shit that doesn't really make any sense at all whatsoever, just because they don't like the game and they want to justify their reasoning for not liking the game, rather than just being adults and saying, I don't like the game, not for me, and just not playing it. They have to say, well, I don't like it and this is why. And also, by the way, I'm going to rate the game because this game is actually pretty bad. Right? If you give something a 6 out of 10, that means it's pretty bad. If anyone gives Wilds a 6 out of 10, they are not being genuine. They genuinely are not being genuine unless they're like a performance freak, unless they're like one of those people who are like, a game has to run at 120 frames the moment I log on. It has to be a 600 FPS, 4K, otherwise it's unplayable. Then, okay, those people, obviously, they might feel a little bit differently. They may be a little bit biased because they really love performance. But a Monster Hunter fan can't be that way. You want to know why? Because Monster Hunter World dropped on console when it first came out. It was not on PC. And on console, it did not run at 60 FPS. It was struggling to do 30 or 40 FPS.
All over the place in every version, creating a jerky looking experience. With that out of the way then, let's start with the base PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions. A lot of people will be playing on base systems after all, so how do they run? Well, this is a highly variable game as I've mentioned before, so these are random samples which attempt to represent average gameplay. Now, different areas could certainly present worse performance, while others can present faster performance, but this is a basic snapshot of what you can expect. On PlayStation 4, the results are unfortunately the same as the beta version overall. The average frame rate hangs right around 30 FPS, but is either consistently above or below this number. This wild inconsistency results in near constant judder and skipping that never really feels very smooth at all. Of course, where the frame rate hangs at any random point seems pretty variable. In some areas, the performance can drop below 30 frames per second and stay there for an extended period of time.
But these guys act like this game was just launched at 120 FPS on PC. It wasn't even on PC when it came out. So that's how I know these guys are full of shit. Because if you loved World, you didn't mind the FPS drops. So you weren't a fucking FPS freak. Like, maybe you've become one, but back then you weren't. So as a Monster Hunter fan, that has never been a thing. Now, obviously, just because it used to have bad FPS on launch doesn't mean it should have it right now. And if it launches on PC, it should have good frames. I'm not saying that that is an excuse. I'm just saying that it wasn't that big of a deal before. Why is it that big of a deal now? But that's regardless of the point. So I end up clicking on this video right here. It's called Monster Hunter Wilds is a Beautiful Mess, but... And I heard that this was one of the more genuine critiques of Monster Hunter. This was one of the ones that really talked about the pros and the cons and assessed the game fairly and gave someone who had a negative opinion about the game, but was being reasonable about that negative opinion and had some reasonable, justifiable explanations as to why he didn't think that the game was very good. So I was like, all right, let's hear him out, right? And within the first minute, maybe even less than a minute, this guy gives Monster Hunter Wilds, compared to all Monster Hunters, a 6 out of 10. To be fair, he did give it 8 out of 10 as a game, which is what he should have fucking said from the beginning. But 6 out of 10 compared to all Monster Hunters is fucking insane. And that's when I immediately knew that this was not going to be genuine, and I'm not going to waste my time because my time is finite, and I'm not going to waste my time watching something that I know someone is just talking out of their ass about. So I just completely paused the video and I left a comment, right? And so here's the comment through it. The comment thread ended up getting pretty long, and then he said a very long paragraph responding to my last comment. And I want to respond to his paragraph in the video form because I got tired of typing, honestly. And also, I want to get this off my chest, not just for him, but for a lot of people who regurgitate the same talking points that he's talking about right now, or some of the points that he's making that just really aren't that big of a freaking deal. But okay, let's go. Okay, so he starts off by saying, I think your main issue isn't that I expressed my opinion and experiences, but rather that I gave it a number rating and you don't like that. No, that's not it. I don't mind you giving it a number rating. It's just that your number rating was completely illogical based on the criticism that you have for the game, or which I already knew it was going to be. I didn't have to hear your video out because I knew that you were going to have no way to justify giving this game a 6, because there is no way to justify giving this game a 6 unless, like I said, you're a performance freak, which you're not because you're a Monster Hunter fan. So you don't really give a fuck about performance like that. Stop it. It's not like what I'm bringing up is something that people haven't voiced before. Others have found similar reasons to take issue. Yeah, I know. I'm not talking about them, though. I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about them. I know they did. You're just another person doing that, so I'm calling you out for it. Ratatasker's video got him quite a bit of backlash for some of the things he was saying. It's expected, but had he given it a rating on top of what he was presenting, would you have been this aggressive and demeaning with him? Well, you guys can go in the comments that I just made with this guy. Do you think I was being aggressive and demeaning? I mean, I am an aggressive person. I'll give him that, but I don't think I was demeaning. I never called him an idiot. I never called him out of his name. I just thought that he was full of crap, and I was calling him out for being full of crap on his opinion. I don't think that that's demeaning in any way, shape, or form. But if he ever watches this video, Monster Hunter, if you feel demeaning in any way, shape, or form, I did not mean to demean you. Yes, I am aggressive. I agree with you there, but I did not mean to demean you. Now, for those who don't know, Ratatasker is another content creator who made a pretty bad video in his criticisms on Monster Hunter, which was debunked by someone else. And a lot of other people in the Monster Hunter community. So yeah, his video was just as bad as yours probably is. Like I said, I haven't watched it, but you put the points for me in this comment. So I'm going to assume that everything that you put in this comment is in the video. And then yeah, your video is just as bad as his because your points don't add up to make the conclusion that you're coming up with. It's just like IGN. When IGN said that in Pokemon there was too much water, so they gave Pokemon like a horrible rating, everyone shit on them because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't justify giving it the rating that you give it. You have to really have a problem with the game and have a fundamental flaw for you to give it a 6 out of 10. That's how that works. 6 is a horrible rating for a game. And yes, if he had given a rating, I would have taken issue with it just as much as yours if his rating was dog shit. But I don't know. I mean, I took issue without that because his arguments were terrible. But I at least heard him out because I thought he was being genuine because he didn't give it a 6 out of 10 off the rip like you did. You showed to me that you weren't being genuine by giving it a 6 out of 10 for a Monster Hunter game, which I knew was a whole bunch of malarkey. I gave brief descriptions of what I was talking about in the video to spare you from having to watch it if you couldn't get past 30 seconds without popping off. Yeah, I understand your theory. I understand why you did that. I mean, it's basic YouTube 101. You tell the person your premise, your thesis at the beginning of the video so they can know if they want to stick around or not. And I do appreciate that. But I'm calling your thesis out for being bullshit. That's it. All right, so next he goes into the on-rail sections, which is basically like whenever you go to a new environment in Monster Hunter, you have to, or Monster Hunter Wilds, I should say, you have to just watch like a glorified cutscene where your character just walks around and does nothing. This is in a lot of AAA games. The reason why they did this was they wanted to introduce the world to the player, introduce the environment, introduce the ecology. A lot of people like this shit. I liked it. I thought it was cool. But the negative of it is, well, if you're trying to play multiplayer with other people, guess what? They have to wait until you get done doing this before they can join. Monster Hunter's never been good with multiplayer in stories. It definitely wasn't good for multiplayer in stories in Wilds. World. So I hope you keep this same energy for World. But yeah, it was an annoying feature. Sure, it has a negative thing about it in the multiplayer aspect, but in the single player aspect, if you're just playing as a single player person, there's nothing wrong with it at all because it completely helps with the immersion. It gets you into the game. It gets you into the world and introduces you to the ecology for people who don't fucking watch YouTube videos of Monster Hunter 200,000 hours a day like we do, including me. You know, it introduces them to what these guys have developed. These guys made an amazing ecosystem, an amazing world, just like they did before, like they've always done. But this is the most amazing one by far, objectively as a fact. So I don't mind them showing off. I don't mind them. It's not that big of a deal. I don't remember how many times it happens, but I'll be generous. I'll be generous to say it happens 10 times. I don't think that's even close to how many times, but let's say it happens 10 times. 10 times you have an on-rail section. Each on-rail section lasts 5 minutes each. So 50 minutes, an hour tops. I'll even round it up to an hour. An hour You're talking about an hour of inconvenient gameplay for multiplayer. That's worthy of giving it a 6 out of 10. Stop it, dude. Come on, stop it. Monster Hunter is a game that you're supposed to pay for thousands of hours. You're talking about 1 hour. Come on, man. So next he talks about Rise and how it wasn't complete on launch because of COVID. And he loved that game, and he still criticized it because he didn't get the true game until much later. Rise wasn't completed because that was a previous Monster Hunter game that I didn't play, but it wasn't completed when it came out because COVID was around the time, so they launched an incomplete game. And that's why I was saying that Rise was an incomplete game. Rise is an example of an incomplete game, and I know you know that, but I was just reminding you that Rise is an example of an incomplete game. World and Wilds are not. They were launched with a full roster, full game, full story, full package. Everything was completed. There was no incomplete. So that incomplete notion is complete nonsensical BS. It was not incomplete at all. It was completed game, completed product, finalized, ready to go. Stop it. Then he says, I never said that Devil Joe, I think it's Devil Yo. I never said it out loud. Devil Yo was supposed to be in Wilds. I'm saying that World had Devil Yo cheesed as a title update. Yeah, I know that. That's what I said. I said that you don't know if World was supposed to have Devil Yo. You don't know that. It wasn't. They never said that. You said originally that you thought World was supposed to have it as an example of incomplete content that World had. No, there was never an announcement. There was never anything like that said that Devil Yo was supposed to be a launch title monster for Monster Hunter World, and they delayed it because it was an incomplete game. That's not a proven fact, and I asked you to prove that, and you can't because it's not a proven fact. So I was just using Devil Yo. Well, you were using Devil Yo as an example to show that World was an incomplete game, and I was telling you that it was not an incomplete game because of Devil Yo, because Devil Yo was never teased. That's my point. And now I'm telling you that Wilds is also not an incomplete game because there was nothing that was teased that wasn't. You could say Legiacris was in the data mines, but data mine does not mean that it was that it has to be in the game. That's why it's called a data mine. Yeah, you can see as many complete assets as you want, but as long as they replace that asset with another asset, which is probably what they did, which is why they didn't release Legiacris. Legiacris would take too much time to release. As long as they replaced it with a monster and we got a full roster, I could see if we had a roster of like 20 monsters. Okay, 15 monsters. Yeah, yeah. We had a full roster, dude. Stop it, man. And each monster, every single monster was unique. Every single monster was fun. Every single monster has great design. Everything. Every monster interacts with the environment. Everything that's there. The greatest roster in Monster Hunter history. Objectively, fact. I will fight you to the death. There's no Monster Hunter game that has a better roster than this one. Stop. It doesn't feel like a complete game when Josiah can be hunted in the story but isn't replayable or have any equipment until a month later in the title update with its assets were already in and Zoe with its assets were already in the files. So basically, he's talking about the final boss of the game. When the final burst first came out, you can only fight it in the final mission, and then you couldn't fight it again. And everyone was up in arms about that. It was the end of the world, and no armor connected to it. It was just the worst thing ever. How could we ever possibly live without that? How could we ever possibly live without being able to repeat the final boss in the Monster Hunter game? It's just unheard of, unfathomable. The game is now a 0 out of 10. That makes sense, right? Okay, you couldn't fight Zosia again at the launch. All right. You couldn't get armor off Zosia at the launch. Okay, that's enough to justify 6 out of 10. So here we go, guys. On his list of justifying 6 out of 10, we have not being able to repeat fight the final boss, plus he doesn't have armor, and having to watch a few cutscenes that he doesn't want to watch. 6 out of 10. Come on, man. So next, he goes into the topic of in-game grinding loop, right? A lot of people have a concern about this because when the game first launched, there was this thing called Ardean Weapons, which in other previous Monster Hunter titles that I know of, there weren't really much grind and like this. It wasn't much grinding in the in-game. It's pretty much you got your in-game gear and wait for title updates. It was pretty simple. And this isn't like the end of the world grind. It's just a little RNG grind that a lot of people don't like. Some people do, some people don't. It is what it is. I don't really like it that much. But I do appreciate that they tried to put something in the game to give you something to do while you wait for title updates. I appreciate the effort. I just feel like they could have maybe done a little bit more to make it a little bit more engaging. I feel like a few tweaks would have made it a little bit better, but it's fine with me, right? It's not the end of the world. And I definitely don't like that they're ugly as hell and no layer weapons. I don't like that for sure. I agree with that criticism. That's justified criticism, but that's not what he's talking about here. What he's talking about is the ways, the fact that you have to fight the same monsters over and over again in order to get the best rewards, in order to farm for the Ardean weapons that they hate so fucking much that they don't want to farm for. Anyways, yeah, you can farm Ardean weapons on any monster in Monster Hunter. You can do it. All you have to do is join in an investigation or find an investigation, whatever you want to do, that has another monster attached to either a 7-star or 8-star Apex. That's all you have to do, and you will be able to farm Ardean weapons to your heart content, and you'll be able to fight every single monster in the game. Every single monster in the game can be tied to this. And how do I know this? Because I've done it, and I fought every single monster in the game. You don't have to just do the only investigation that pops up and just do that one and then complain. You can pick other investigations. Now, would it have been nice that they had it the way it's going to be in the near future when they update the game and make it where all monsters, all Apex monsters are A-stars, and then we have a lot more variety? Yes, of course. But at the end of the day, there was variety there from the beginning. There was a justifiable reason to farm every single monster in Monster Hunter from the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds. There was a reason to do it. And for some reason, he keeps going back and saying, yeah, I know you can go and pick the weaker monsters and upgrade the materials, but that's inefficient. That's not what I'm talking about. You don't have to do that. Look at what I'm doing here. You can find monsters fighting. You can fight them and grind 8, rarity 7, whatever you want to call it, the max rank Ardean materials. You can do that. I'm showing you it here. So you don't have to just fight Arkveld. I know that's what people say online, but if you play the game, you don't have to do that. And everyone who plays the game knows this. So this criticism is completely invalid. And this is what I'm talking about. This is one of your talking points. This is one of the reasons why this game could get a 6 out of 10, and it's not even true. It's not even true. But even if it was true, even if it were true that you can only hunt 8 stars to get 8-star Ardeans and you could not hunt anything else, so we would be stuck with Arkveld, it would still not be justifiable to give the game a 6 out of 10. It still would not be. That's the crazy part. But it's not even true. It's not even true. Wow. And then he goes into, which I think is the complete objective slam dunk of the game, where he says, I don't want the game to become complete over time by them adding updates, because they did that in the past. So I feel like that's what they're going to do here, which is obviously a fallacy. You cannot judge a game based on your premonitions of what's going to happen, right? That's not how you do things. You have to judge things for what they are, right? I mean, I'm sure we all can agree there. He even agrees to that at some point. And he says he doesn't want to be paranoid of something happening if it never does. Despite my weariness, it seems that some of what I was saying has come true already. Okay, so basically what you're saying is them updating the game is a negative now. Do you understand what you're saying? This is what I mean by bias. You're saying that them adding to the game is a negative because the game was incomplete before. So every launch title, Monster Hunter, should never get updates? Is that what you're saying? This game shouldn't get any more updates? It should have just came with the title updates and the fucking GU, the Master Rank expansion? It should have just launched like that? Is that what you're saying? What is your argument here? Obviously, they're going to update and make the game better. That's what happens with a live service game. The last 3 Monster Hunters have all been live service. This is not new. This is not new at all. So we know they're going to do this. The question is, when the game launched, was it a full, complete package? Yes, it was. Objectively, it was. There was nothing missing that ruined the gameplay loop. There was nothing missing from any other previous Monster Hunter games that, in terms of content, in terms of quality of life, in terms of things you may like or dislike, sure. But that's not what Monster Hunter is about. Monster Hunter is about hunting monsters. Did this game come with environments to hunt the monsters in? Yes. Did this game come with monsters to hunt in those environments? Yes. Did this game come with all the weapons? Yes. So what are we missing? Things that you personally don't like, maybe the next person doesn't like, tracking, for example. You might love tracking. I know people that hate it. So it's not objectively required for tracking to be in a Monster Hunter game, which I'm going to get into later. But that's just an example of something that you may like, other people don't. It is not a requirement. As you can obviously see with Wilds, it's not a requirement for the game to function. And as long as the game functions, as long as the game works within its bounds, within what the developers are aiming for, then that's all that matters. And that's why you can't give it a 6 out of 10, because it succeeds at doing that at least a level of an 8 out of 10, at least. And then it goes into UI. I don't really want to go into UI because that's subjective, but the UI is completely and totally functional, and everything that you need it to do is completely and totally functional. And maybe there are ways that the older Monster Hunters did the UI that are more functional or better for their systems, but not for Wilds, or maybe they are better, but even if they were better, even if the UI were, let's say, very bad, right? It's a bad UI. Okay, whatever. Does that justify 6 out of 10? Does that justify 6 out of 10, guys? If I add that, if I give him that, then I say, yeah, the UI is horrible. God, it sucks. 6 out of 10, bro? For a bad UI? Come on, man. And then he goes into a tangent on other things that he just considers that are make the game worse. And I want to read some of them as a combination of some of these elements alongside a few other things like my weapons gameplay. I don't know what his weapon is, but I know some weapons weren't received so well. Some weapons were. But I mean, again, that's subjective. As long as the weapon can hunt, as long as the weapon can kill monsters, it functions. Just because it doesn't function like a previous game doesn't mean it's automatically bad. It's just your preference. And then he says, the core system mechanics of wounds. What is wrong with wounds? Please, God, tell me what's wrong with them. I really would love to know what is the problem with wounds. I already know what you're going to say. It makes the game easier. I can topple monster easier. So what? So what if it makes the game easier? If it makes it better, if it makes it easier for you to punish the monster because you know how to effectively apply wounds, you know how to effectively dodge, you know how to effectively punish the monster, and it makes it easier for you to topple it, so what? That's the point. It's supposed to get easier as you get better. You're supposed to have ways to punish the monster. That's the whole point of Monster Hunter. That's the whole point. Like what? What is the problem with wounds? Please tell me. I would love to know. Please tell me. If it makes the game easier, then why don't you run heroics? All these guys talking about the game is so easy, but they would never make a heroic set. Why not? Heroics, for those who don't know, Monster Hunter, non-Monster Hunter fans, is basically when you put on a set of armor that gives you an extreme power boost. It makes you the strongest set in the game objectively by far, by a large margin. But in order for it to work, you have to keep your health. You have to get hit by the monster or take damage in some form of way and have your health stay very, very low, basically to where the next hit will kill you. Basically, you'll be at one-shot range, right? That's how, and when you do that, you get an extreme power boost. That's how you can make the game way more difficult, and you can get rewarded for it. You can actually get rewarded for making the game more difficult on yourself, unlike other games like Elden Ring or any other solo games where usually they don't reward you for making the game harder. It's just a way to challenge yourself. It's just make the game more challenging for yourself. But you could do both. You can make the game more challenging, and you can do more damage to the monster, so you get rewarded for it. But none of these guys will do that because the game's so easy. None of these guys will ever put on a heroic set under any circumstance, but it's so easy, right? Give me a fucking break, man. Give me a fucking break. He says tracking. Okay, I said I was going to talk about tracking. So like I said, tracking was not a catch-all be-all. Not everyone loved tracking. I can tell you for a fact, not everyone loved tracking. And I know I liked it at the beginning. I really did. But once you realize every monster, for each quest you pick, every monster has a set path. It's not random. It's not RNG. They go this place, then they go that place. They start here, they spawn here, then they go here, then they go here, then they go here. Every single time. So there's no point in tracking. If you're being honest, right? You play World a lot, then tracking is pointless. You know it because you don't have to track each quest. You start the quest, you know where the monster is because you already did this quest. I know exactly where he spawns. He spawns right there. I'm just gonna run to him. I don't need the marks. That's what will happen. And I'm sure Capcom saw that. So what's the point of having a system that that doesn't work that way. Now you could say they could have enhanced it. They could have made it more difficult to track monsters. They could have made monsters spawn in random locations and move to random spots like they kind of did in Wilds, which is they kind of did it. I mean, sometimes they do spawn in the same place. It's definitely more varied in Wilds than it was in World, right? But the crux of the issue is people just didn't find it fun. That's just the facts. People didn't find tracking fun, and what you need and tracking is just an example of this greater issue that a lot of Monster Hunter players in the Monster Hunter community who complain about Wilds need to understand. Not everything has to be made for you. Not everything has to be tailored for you. Okay, Monster Hunter is trying to appease more people and give people more of a reason to play it and enjoy the gameplay flow, which is hunting monsters, fighting monsters. Okay, I know people call it Monster Fighter, but some of the best fights in the history of Monster Hunter were in arenas anyway. Fatalis was in an arena. I didn't hear you complaining then that you couldn't track Fatalis. Elatrion, I didn't hear you complaining about that. So why is it such a big deal for you? It's just because it's different, because you missed that. You missed that feeling when you first played Wild the first time and you were like, oh, I don't know where anything is. Sorry, World for the first time. You're like, I don't know where anything is. Oh my God, I got to track this monster. I got to figure out where this monster is. You missed that, and that's okay to miss that. It's fine. It's natural. But you need to understand that you missing that is not something that's making this game worse. It's making World better. It's making that experience what you had with World better. It's something you can reminisce on and look back fondly. But that doesn't mean that every Monster Hunter game has to follow that formula. That's just not fair. And the same goes with any other feature that you can come up with that doesn't affect the core gameplay, that doesn't affect the core gameplay of hunting monsters. Every other feature that you can come up with that was in the past that is not present in Wilds, it's the same argument for all of them. And all this was enough to make the game less enjoyable for the experience that he had before it. Okay, so nothing made it more enjoyable then. Not the most amazing environments ever created in Monster Hunter history, and some of the most amazing environmental features in gaming, period. That didn't do it. The fact that when Uthduna does a belly dive on water and the wave splashes you away. You've never been moved by a wave in a video game before, a wave of water. It's never happened. It's the first time it's ever happened in gaming history that I'm aware of anyway. That was not interesting to you. That didn't add. You're only talking about what took away. You're only talking about what got added. You're only talking about when Raydal does a railgun, fire attack on the sand, and the sand makes a rock, the Fulgurite rock. You're only talking about that. You don't want to talk about how Uthduna has multiple tendons that are all able to be cut off and act independently of one another. You don't want to talk about how Jin Dahad moves around the map and is basically a fucking Final Fantasy boss fight. You don't want to talk about how Arkveld is an amazingly designed monster. One of the most unique monster designs of all time, and uses his chains in a battle in a way that makes him very unique and very. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to talk about how the secret changes the gameplay. Completely changes the gameplay. Makes you makes it becomes integrated into the fight in a very helpful way. Whereas in Elden Ring, it was just riding a horse was just basically to transition a transportation tool. And Wilds, they retooled the transportation tool and actually made it actually in part of the gameplay more than any mount in the history of gaming. It's definitely in the history of Monster Hunter. You don't want to talk about that. You don't talk about how all the weapons got upgraded and added new features and new changes that made them more powerful, more aggressive. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to talk about the graphics, how amazing they are, the customization, the fact that the game came with layer armor off rip the first time in the history of Monster Hunter. So it has objectively the most customization on launch that any Monster Hunter times 100,000. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to talk about like anything good. It's only the bad things. Only those bad things. Those bad things outweighed everything that I just said here. Are you serious? Are you really being genuine? The best Monster Hunter roster of all time, objectively, on launch. Objectively, the best roster. Like I said, are we really being genuine here? Like I'm asking, does it sound genuine now? Does what I just said, all that stuff I said, imagine listening to all that stuff I said and saying, yeah, but the menu, the UI is really not that good. Yeah, but I mean, I heard what you said. I mean, I get it, right? It's amazing game, one of the most technologically advanced games ever made. But I mean, like the UI, man. Oh yeah, and I couldn't fight the last boss more than once. That was 6 out of 10. Like, Jesus Christ, you guys are the biggest fucking crybabies of all time, man. And I know for a fact, the thing that pisses me off the most about all you guys is you're not going to stop playing this game. And no matter how much you try to say you're going to take a break, you will be back. You will be back to Monster Hunter. You all will. We all know it. You know it. I know it. So stop all the bullshit, okay? Stop all the complaining, all the whining, I'm never touching this game. I'm done with the franchise, brother. Stop it. Who are you fooling, okay? And if you don't come back, then good for you. I'm happy that you were able to move on from Monster Hunter. This game, I'm happy you were able to move on from Monster Hunter Wilds. This game that just completely ruined your life, ruined the franchise. It's the worst game ever made because the UI is a little funky. Unbelievable, right? And so I don't want to come up as a glazer. If you got it to the end of this video, you probably think I'm a fucking Monster Hunter glazer, and I'm sure you've probably turned it off by now if you hate my opinions. But for those who heard me out, I don't want to come up as a glazer, okay? I do understand that there are valid criticism to Monster Hunter Wilds, just like there is valid criticism for any game. But the criticism that these guys are levying is not valid. It's simply emotional. It's completely illogical. And I can give an example of a logical criticism about the game. One of my most biggest criticisms about the game is that the way they pitched this game, the way the developers designed this game, is that they wanted people, for those who don't know, they wanted it to be like Guiding Lands, but the whole game be Guiding Lands. And those who don't know, Guiding Lands was like an area in Monster Hunter World where you would just join players, be in lobbies with those players, and just hunt everything that came up. That was like the plan, right? That was the plan. And it worked to an extent, but this was like a much more advanced version of that idea. Unfortunately, they made it impossible to join other players in a world unless you know them personally. And they're your friends and you add them. Otherwise, they made it impossible. There's no like feature to just go out and just join someone's world, right? That's no one does that. Everyone just spams investigations because not only is it more efficient to do that for farming, it also is just impossible to do it the other way. So they really dropped the ball there. I feel like they should have just had lobbies where people join the lobby, and while you're in the lobby, you kill a monster, another monster spawns randomly. You don't have any control of what spawns, and that would have made it a little bit more interesting and actually helped assist and facilitate the vision that they clearly wanted for this game, because I'm sure they see now that literally 99% of the player base is just spamming investigations all day, and they're not engaging in the world in the way that they have created it. They're engaging in the way that Monster Hunter has always been, which is just spamming quests. So that is a completely valid criticism about the game. And that actually takes away from the gameplay loop that they had intended on creating for this game specifically, not for any other Monster Hunter for Wilds. So there's an example of an actual criticism, so you can compare it to the criticism that these guys are giving. Compare what I just said to the UI kind of bothers me. Compared to what I just said to I have to fight the last boss. I want to fight him more than once. And now you can see like the level of criticism. Okay, so yeah, I pretty much got everything I need to say out. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm going to go play Monster Hunter Wilds because I actually enjoy the game, and I think it's a really good game, and I have a great time playing it. I'm going to go have fun. I'm not going to go complain about everything in the whole world that I don't like all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm just going to enjoy this game and have a great time with it, and wait for more content and play that too. And then when I get bored, I'm going to go outside. Simple. All right, peace.